Black CEO denied first-class seat 15 minutes later. He grounds the plane for everyone. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Get out now! The words exploded through the cabin like a gunshot in a cathedral. Every conversation froze. Forks of light from the overheads flickered across rows of stunned passengers. The man being shouted at didn't move. He sat there, calm. Posture carved from steel, a quiet storm contained in a navy suit. Beside him, a half-empty glass of water trembled on its tray table. A red-faced airline security officer loomed above him, veins visible, voice sharp enough to slice the recycled air. I said, "Get up, sir. This is first class, not your seat." Phones rose like black mirrors, catching every frame. Someone whispered, "Is he really going to fight him?" The man's gaze lifted slowly. No anger, no fear, just control. "Make me leave," he said softly. The officer blinked, thrown by the calm. The entire cabin seemed to shrink around that single sentence. From row 2, a woman clutched her pearls. A man behind muttered, "Just follow the rules." Another started recording, the red light on her phone pulsing like a heartbeat. "Sir, don't make this harder than it needs to be." The officer's voice cracked between authority and uncertainty, but the seated man only tilted his head. "Are you certain," he asked, "that this is the line you want to draw today? Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now back to Elijah. The officer motioned to another crew member. The woman hesitated, her eyes darting between them. "He has a boarding pass," she murmured. "First class. Seat 2A. But the officer snapped. "It's a system error." Passengers exchanged looks, the silent, poisonous kind. Elijah Cole didn't argue. He simply reached for the boarding stub on his tray and held it out. The paper gleamed white under the cabin lights, unshaken. "Then maybe," he said, "you should fix your system." A ripple of murmurs spread like turbulence through the aisle. The officer's jaw clenched. Someone whispered, "Because calm, in that moment, was power." He leaned back, fingers interlaced, gaze steady. Outside the window, the tarmac lights glowed gold against the rain. Inside, the air had changed thicker, colder, aware. Even the engines seemed to hum lower, as if listening. The officer took a step back, uncertain now. But pride is a dangerous co-pilot. He straightened again, louder this time. "Sir, if you don't move, I'll have you removed from this aircraft." Elijah's eyes met his flat, measured, almost pitying. "No," he said. "You'll have this aircraft removed from me." And for a heartbeat, no one understood what that meant. Not yet. For 5 long seconds, silence ruled the cabin. The officer's breath came heavy, loud enough to drown out the hum of the engines. Passengers shifted, caught between fascination and fear. Somewhere in the back, a phone recorded everything: the calm man, the furious guard, and the strange, growing tension that felt like gravity reversing. "Sir," the officer repeated, voice breaking through the quiet, "if you refuse to comply, you're risking arrest." Elijah didn't flinch. "And if you refuse to think," he said evenly, "you're risking something much larger." His tone wasn't a threat, it was a fact. He reached for his phone. Not a sudden motion, not aggressive, just precise, like an engineer adjusting a dial. One text, 2 words, ground 475, Sleddy. No one noticed at first. The cabin buzzed again, the officer gesturing, passengers murmuring. But then came the sound. A chime from the cockpit, followed by a pause in the pilot's announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a brief system delay. Please remain seated." The officer frowned, confused. "What? What did you do?" Elijah didn't answer. He just placed his phone back on the armrest, eyes calm. Behind them, a woman whispered, "Did he just?" Another replied, "No way. He's just some passenger." Another way, but even the flight attendants could feel it now. Something had shifted in the air, something controlled. The lights dimmed for a moment, then returned brighter. A flight attendant rushed in from the galley, whispering to the officer, "Headquarters just called. All boarding is on hold. System-wide." Her voice shook. System-wide. The officer straightened, face paling. "That's impossible." Elijah finally turned to him. "Impossible," he said softly, "is just what arrogance calls the truth before it learns better." He picked up his water glass and took a slow sip. "Who are you?" the officer demanded. "Someone who wrote the software you're using to delay me," Elijah replied, "and someone who just paused your entire network until you remember how to treat people." The passengers gasped. One man near the window muttered, "He can't mean wait, Skylink." Did he say Skylink? Elijah didn't confirm. Didn't need to. The name alone carried weight. He leaned back, gaze steady. "I told you, this isn't about a seat. It's about how systems behave when no one's watching." Outside, the plane's wings gleamed under the floodlights, motionless. Inside, every monitor on the flight deck blinked the same message. Authorization pending. Nothing could move without clearance from Skylink Dynamics, the company Elijah Cole built. The same system this airline had outsourced control to. Passengers were whispering now. Someone filmed the officer's frozen expression. Another whispered, "He just grounded the plane." The sected distress. The cabin buzzed like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. Elijah's phone vibrated once an incoming message. Ether control. Confirm suspension duration? He typed one word back. 15. 15 minutes. 15 minutes for a lesson in dignity. He turned to the officer one last time. "You said this wasn't my seat," he said quietly. "Turns out, it's my plane for the next quarter hour." And with that, he closed his eyes, the picture of calm authority amid chaos. Outside, the runway lights flickered again. The engines stayed silent, awaiting clearance from Skylink operations. The world had stopped moving because one man, humiliated in public, had decided it should. 15 minutes earlier, they had mocked him. Now, hundreds of passengers sat in the frozen silence of an aircraft that refused to move. The captain's voice broke through the intercom again, steady but strained. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've just been informed of a temporary systems hold from Skylink Dynamics. We're awaiting further instructions before takeoff." Every passenger turned toward Elijah. The calm man in seat 2A, the one who hadn't raised his voice, hadn't moved an inch, yet somehow controlled the sky. The security officer stood rigid beside him, still processing. "What do you mean, Skylink?" he asked quietly, as if afraid the answer would confirm what he already suspected. Elijah didn't look up. "You use their systems," he said. "Their code runs your planes." "I wrote that code." The words hung there, heavy, undeniable. At the back, a young man in a hoodie whispered to his girlfriend, "That's him, the founder. Elijah Cole. He's the reason half the airlines still run on time." Phones lit up instantly, faces glowing with realization. Someone pulled up an article headline, "The Ghost CEO Behind Skylink Dynamics, the Man Who Never Flies Commercial." And now, here he was, flying commercial. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Elijah. The officer's radio crackled headquarters, demanding an explanation. He stammered into the mic. The voice that replied was sharp. "Executive? What's his name?" Elijah looked up, almost amused. "Just tell them the owner." The officer's eyes widened. He whispered, "You're joking." Elijah gave a faint smile. "I don't joke with flight systems." The intercom chimed again. This time it was the flight manager, her voice trembling. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to an internal systems issue, this flight will be delayed until further notice. Please remain seated." Gasps, murmurs. Someone clapped softly. Another voice muttered, "About time." Someone humbled them. Mutter. From the corner, a woman in business class called out, "So you really shut down the plane because they disrespected you?" Elijah turned his head slightly. "No," he said, "because they disrespected us." He gestured lightly toward the passengers, still watching in stunned silence. The difference between arrogance and accountability is measured in minutes. Today, 15. Phones caught his every word. Within moments, hashtags began appearing across social feeds. Number Skylink standby. Number respect before takeoff. Number Elijah Cole. The officer, now pale, tried again. "Mr. Cole, I didn't realize." Elijah cut him off gently. "That's the point. You never do until the world stops moving." He reached for his phone again, typing a brief command. "Resume sequence." Delay complete. Immediately, the cockpit lights stabilized. The engines rumbled back to life. Passengers exhaled, the sound like a collective prayer. Elijah set his phone down, looked out the window, and said softly, "Next time someone says they belong here, maybe just believe them." The officer nodded shakily, unable to speak. The plane began to taxi toward the runway, slow, humbled, obedient. And as the engines rose, so did a quiet realization among everyone on board. The man they tried to remove didn't just have a seat on the plane. He owned the sky it flew in. By the time Flight 475 rolled back to the gate, the world was already watching. What had started as a humiliation inside one aircraft had turned into a global broadcast of poetic justice. Outside, camera flashes streaked through the airport, glass like lightning. Inside, Elijah Cole remained seated, unbothered, scrolling through his phone. The cabin was quiet. Even the air conditioning hummed cautiously, as if aware that arrogance had just been grounded by intellect. The officer who had confronted him earlier stood by the cockpit door, no longer barking orders. His hands were clasped, trembling slightly. "Mr. Cole," he began, voice thin with regret. "I didn't mean—" "You meant every word," Elijah said, still not looking up. "You just didn't expect consequences." The man's mouth opened, then closed. There was nothing left to say. A flight attendant approached timidly. "Sir, corporate security wants to speak with you. They're asking if you'd prefer a private lounge." Elijah finally looked up, eyes calm as midnight. "I prefer that no one else is escorted off a plane for existing." She nodded quickly and walked away, cheeks flushed. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here." Now, back to Elijah. The captain exited the cockpit, hat in hand, posture straight as ceremony. "Mr. Cole," he said quietly, "I want to personally apologize on behalf of the airline." Elijah's gaze softened just slightly. "It's not your apology that matters, it's your awareness." He stood, smoothing the crease in his jacket. The surrounding passengers instinctively rose too, as if acknowledging rank. A woman in row 3 whispered, "He didn't yell. He just rewrote the room." "Huh," and that was exactly it. Outside, on the tarmac, airline executives were scrambling on calls. Skylink Dynamics servers had issued an automatic compliance warning, violation of conduct protocol review pending. It meant one thing: suspension of flight operations until further clearance. For the next 2 hours, 15 aircraft under that airline's code remained grounded across the country. From the gate window, Elijah watched them, giant metallic birds, grounded by the arrogance of one moment. A journalist recognized him and rushed forward. "Mr. Cole, can you confirm you triggered the Skylink shutdown?" Elijah turned his head, the hint of a smile crossing his lips. "I didn't shut anything down," he said. "I just let the system reflect its values." The answer hit the air like scripture. Within minutes, that quote appeared across headlines. "I just let the system reflect its values, Elijah Cole." The internet exploded. Hashtags multiplied. Comment sections lit with awe and debate. But Elijah had already turned off his phone. He walked toward the terminal lounge, every step measured, controlled. At the corner, a young security guard, barely 20, called after him. "Sir," he said nervously, "for what it's worth, I saw how they treated you. It wasn't right. Elijah paused. Then promise me, he said quietly. You'll recognize it sooner next time. The guard nodded. As Elijah stepped into the glass-walled lounge, the airport outside shimmered under the afternoon light. Dozens of grounded planes lined the runway, like lessons frozen in metal. He exhaled slowly. 15 minutes, he murmured. That's all it took to show them what a system built without respect looks like when it stops working. He set his carry-on down, eyes distant. For the first time that day, Elijah allowed himself to close them. Not from exhaustion, but from the calm satisfaction of a man who knew that silence, when wielded correctly, could be louder than thunder. By morning, the story had become impossible to contain. News anchors repeated it on a loop. Black CEO grounds flight after being denied first-class seat. Clips from the passengers' phones had gone viral overnight. The officer yelling, Elijah sitting calm, the sudden silence that followed his command. Millions watched, dissected, applauded. Some called him arrogant. Most called him necessary. At 7:12 a.m., the airline's stock began to slide. By 7:20, corporate had issued an emergency memo to all employees. Pending resolution with Skylink Dynamics. Do not engage the media. Inside Skylink's Chicago headquarters, the boardroom was a mirror of efficiency, glass walls, silent screens, digital calm. Elijah stood at the far end of the table, jacket off, sleeves rolled. He wasn't angry. He was orchestrating. Grounding protocol worked exactly as designed, said Rachel, his operations chief. No data breaches, no mechanical errors. Just one very public demonstration of integrity. Elijah nodded. Good. Make sure it stays that way. She hesitated. You know they're begging for reinstatement. They'll wait. Elijah said simply. We don't reward disrespect with access. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Elijah. On the wall, a dozen muted TV screens showed pundits debating. One headline read, Was this justice or overreach? Elijah looked up at it for a long time. That's the problem, he said. When a black man uses power quietly, they call it aggression. When others do it loudly, they call it leadership. He turned toward the window, watching the skyline glint under the early sun. Rachel spoke carefully. They're offering an apology, full page, public, with compensation. Elijah smiled faintly. Money doesn't fix culture. Rewrite the agreement. What terms? He turned back, eyes focused. Training. Mandatory ethics reform for all partner airlines, and we'll design the curriculum. Rachel blinked, realizing. You're turning humiliation into policy. Elijah nodded. Into prevention. He picked up a folder marked Skylink Human Initiative, a new division he'd drafted months earlier but never funded. Until now, reallocate 20% of this quarter's profit, he said. Scholarships for aviation students, underrepresented backgrounds only. Rachel smiled. Already on it. Outside the glass walls, the office buzzed with quiet pride. No one cheered. No one needed to. Elijah's form of victory wasn't loud. It was systemic. His phone buzzed again, an unknown number. He glanced at it, then answered. Mr. Cole, said a nervous voice. This is Robert Gaines, CEO of Atlas Air. I wanted to personally apologize for how Elijah cut him off gently. You're not calling to apologize, Robert. You're calling because your fleet uses our software. A long pause. That's correct. Then start by fixing your people, not your image. The line went dead. Elijah set the phone down, expression unreadable. Rachel spoke softly, almost a whisper. You could have ruined them completely. I don't ruin, Elijah replied. I realign. It might have God, and my braided have flattened from the round. For a moment, the only sound was the city outside, the distant hum of airplanes climbing through the morning sky, each one powered by the code of the man they once tried to belittle. He exhaled, steady, composed. Let them fly, he murmured. But this time, they'll remember who gave them permission. And somewhere, across thousands of feet of airspace, every departing plane carried an invisible signature, not of control, but of consequence. The next 48 hours turned the aviation world upside down. Every outlet from CNN to Al Jazeera replayed the same footage. A composed black man in a blue suit, a shouting officer, and a plane that simply refused to move. Airlines called it a systems malfunction. The public called it accountability at 30,000 feet. Elijah didn't grant interviews. He didn't post, didn't explain. He didn't need to. The silence was his statement. But inside the sleek glass towers of corporate America, executives were panicking. The airline's board convened an emergency meeting. Lawyers spoke in panicked tones. PR consultants argued about optics. One of them slammed a printed memo onto the table. Skylink Dynamics has suspended all support for our fleet. All domestic flights to remain grounded until clearance. Billions in losses. All because one man refused to be moved. Meanwhile, at Skylink HQ, Elijah's team monitored the chaos through mirrored screens. Rachel looked over the data feed. "You've got 5 airlines requesting reinstatement," she said. 2 want private meetings. 1 wants to buy Skylink outright. Elijah didn't look up. "They don't buy integrity. They license it. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here." Now, back to Elijah. That evening, he sat alone in his penthouse, lights low, the city glowing beneath him. On his desk lay the printed apology letter from the airline's CEO, sterile, rehearsed, written in the language of damage control. He read the first line aloud. "We regret the misunderstanding that occurred aboard Flight 475. He almost laughed. "Misunderstanding," he repeated quietly. "That's what they call it when respect is denied," with a smile. He picked up a pen and began writing his reply, not to them, but to the world. "A system built without dignity will always crash on takeoff." It wasn't a quote. It was a principle. His assistant entered softly. "Mr. Cole, CNN just requested a statement. They said the world wants to hear from you." Elijah's answer was simple. Let them hear through action. The next morning, Skylink's homepage changed. No press release, no headline. Just a single black banner with white text. "Respect cleared for takeoff." Below it, a link. Skylink Foundation, empowering the next generation of aviation leaders. It was the official launch of his scholarship and mentorship program, funded by the penalty fees the airlines had offered as compensation. He turned every cent of humiliation into opportunity. By noon, the foundation's donation portal crashed under global traffic. Comments poured in. He didn't cancel them. He corrected them. This is how justice sounds when it's fluent in power. It's not a bribe. In a boardroom across town, the airline's legal team finally reached out again. "Mr. Cole, we're prepared to meet all your terms," the chairman said over speakerphone. "Full training reform, public accountability, donation partnership." Elijah's response was calm. "You grounded yourselves. I simply gave you the mirror." Rachel looked at him as he ended the call. "They'll name this protocol after you," she said. He smiled faintly. "Names fade. Standards don't." He turned toward the glass wall, watching another jet streak across the morning sky, free, obedient, respectful. In its reflection, his own face appeared steady, unreadable. "Sometimes," he murmured, "the only way to make them see you is to make them stop." Outside, the clouds drifted apart, revealing a clear path of sky, as if the universe itself had granted permission to ascend again. The world didn't just talk about Elijah Cole anymore, it studied him. Business schools dissected his silence like a case study. Ethics professors replayed the footage to students, learning how power behaves when it refuses to scream. In airports, travelers whispered his name like myth. "He's the guy who grounded an entire fleet with one text." He didn't fight the system, he was the system. But inside Skylink's headquarters, Elijah wasn't chasing headlines. He was engineering something else permanent. The new division, Skylink Human Initiative, had gone live. Its mission: to redesign how corporations measure respect. Instead of PR campaigns, he built protocols. Real-time AI analytics that tracked employee bias in airports, and flagged discriminatory behavior instantly. Rachel entered the room with a stack of reports. "We've had 7 major airlines sign the ethics charter," she said, "and 3 government contracts are pending." Elijah didn't look up. "Good. Not enough." She hesitated. He turned from the glass wall, eyes steady. "Until the instinct to humiliate becomes unprofitable, it's not enough." X. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Elijah. The city below pulsed with morning energy sirens, sunlight, noise, but Elijah's office was all quiet control. On one screen, he watched real-time feeds from airports where Skylink software had just deployed. Green indicators. Compliance. Red. Violation. Every red dot was a story waiting to happen. A warning, a reminder. Rachel exhaled. "You know, the airlines are calling this the Cole effect," he smirked. "They name storms after people too. It doesn't mean they understand the weather." He turned off the monitor and faced her. "Rachel, draft a new clause in all our contracts. Any airline using Skylink must commit to a respect certification. If they fail, their fleet goes dark until they fix it." Her eyebrows lifted. "That's global leverage." He nodded. "It's not leverage. It's insurance for dignity." News tickers began to flash across the world. Skylink implements new respect certification policy. Airlines scrambled to comply. Investors panicked for a day. Stocks dipped. Then, unexpectedly, they soared. Because the public, the passengers trusted Skylink. Airlines that joined the initiative saw bookings rise. People wanted to fly with integrity. At a press conference in New York, a journalist asked Elijah the question everyone wanted answered. "Mr. Cole, do you think what happened on Flight 475 was racism or misunderstanding?" Elijah paused. The room held its breath. He looked straight into the cameras and said quietly, "It was education paid in delay." The reporters scribbled furiously. The quote already viral before he'd finished speaking. He continued, "I don't weaponize humiliation. I translate it into systems, into safeguards, into lessons you can't unlearn." When he left the stage, flashbulbs chased him down the hallway, but Elijah didn't slow. He'd already moved past the spectacle. Because while the world debated morality, he was building infrastructure for it. That night, in the solitude of his penthouse, he stood before the window again. The sky was alive with light trails, dozens of flights streaking across the darkness like constellations he'd rearranged, each one moving because he allowed it. He whispered to himself, "They tried to take my seat. So, I took the sky." And beneath him, the world kept turning slower, humbler, because one man had proved that sometimes power isn't about who sits in first class, but who writes the flight plan. It was late evening when the call came in from Geneva. "Mr. Cole," said the voice of the International Aviation Council chairwoman, "we'd like to invite you to keynote the Global Ethics Summit next month." Elijah looked out over the Chicago skyline. Glass, steel, endless air. Still, he accepted. The world had shifted since Flight 475. Airlines were no longer selling luxury. They were selling conscience. Posters hung in airports. Certified by Skylink, "Fly with respect." A slogan born out of humiliation had become a global brand of accountability. At the Skylink headquarters, Rachel walked into the boardroom carrying the latest analytics. 72 carriers signed, she said. 9 are still negotiating. Elijah didn't turn from the window. "They're not negotiating," he replied. "They're waiting to see if the world forgets." He faced her then, calm, deliberate. "Let's remind them. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Elijah. 3 weeks later, Geneva. The summit's main hall shimmered with white light and polished marble. World leaders, CEOs, diplomats, every seat filled. The moderator whispered, "Your speech is scheduled for 12 minutes. Elijah nodded once. 12 minutes is enough to land a plane or change a mind. When he stepped onto the stage, the cameras fell silent. No music, no spectacle, just his voice. I was told to leave a seat. I chose to stop a system. And for 15 minutes, the world realized what happens when dignity is denied permission to board. Gasps rippled through the audience. He continued, every word measured like calibration data. Technology isn't neutral. Every algorithm inherits the morality of its maker. Every machine reflects the values of those who build it. And every institution will eventually face the people it pretended not to see. Behind him, a screen flickered to life, showing images. Grounded planes, waiting passengers, then students smiling under a banner reading, Skylink Foundation, Future Engineers of Flight. I didn't ground those planes to punish anyone, Elijah said. I grounded them to make sure the next generation never gets grounded for who they are. Applause thundered, but he raised a hand, quieting it. Respect is not charity, it's infrastructure. When he finished, the hall stood in silence, not for approval, but reverence. Later that night, alone in his hotel suite, Elijah sat on the balcony overlooking Lake Geneva. The water glimmered like circuitry beneath the moon. Rachel called from Chicago. You broke the internet again, she said. I didn't, Elijah replied. The truth just found better reception. Quote, he poured himself a glass of wine, remembering the faces from that day, the officer's confusion, the passenger's silence, the way justice had arrived without volume. On the table lay a letter, hand-delivered at the summit, from the airline CEO. Mr. Cole, our company owes you more than an apology. We owe you change. The officer from Flight 475 has resigned, but at his request, we're funding 10 scholarships through your foundation in his name. Elijah read it twice, then folded it neatly. Forgiveness wasn't his goal. Correction was. He stared out at the water. That's how systems evolve, he whispered, one error log at a time. The next morning, international news covered every angle of the summit. Headlines scrolled across every screen. Elijah Cole redefines corporate ethics, from Seat 2A to global policy, but none of it captured what really mattered. Not revenge, but redesign. In airports across 5 continents, passengers boarded planes that now displayed a small plaque near the entrance door. This aircraft operates under the Skylink human code, respect cleared for takeoff. People noticed, they took photos, they smiled. At Skylink HQ, a technician pointed to one of the new dashboards. See that, sir? Zero bias alerts this week. Rachel grinned. First time in history, Elijah simply nodded. Keep watching. Systems drift when pride returns. That night back in Chicago, the skyline shimmered in shades of blue and gold. Elijah stood by the window again, the same posture, the same stillness, but the air was different now. He had turned a 15-minute humiliation into a permanent upgrade for humanity's flight path. Outside, a plane roared overhead, its lights tracing a clean line through the dark. He whispered, not to anyone but to the sky itself. They tried to ground me, so I taught them how to fly better. The sound faded into the night, leaving only the echo of purpose and the faint, endless hum of engines obeying new rules. Rules, written by a man who understood that power isn't about control. It's about. The sky above Chicago was velvet black, streaked with the gold trails of departing planes, hundreds of them, moving through the night under systems that bore his signature. Inside the Skylink Tower, the last lights burned in Elijah Cole's office. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, watching a flight climb through the darkness. For the first time in months, there were no alerts, no delays, no red dots blinking across his monitors. Just calm. A rare, earned calm. Rachel entered quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee. Midnight again, she said. He smiled faintly. Peace doesn't keep business hours. She set 1 cup down beside him. The summit changed everything. Governments are rewriting policy using your charter. Elijah nodded. That's good, but policy is a promise. Dignity has to be a habit. They stood in silence, watching the planes disappear into the night. Each one, a small moving testament to what restraint could build. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Elijah. The next morning, a letter waited on his desk. No signature, no logo, just handwriting. He opened it slowly. Mr. Cole, you don't know me. I was the security officer on Flight 475. I lost my job, yes, but I gained my sight. I'm now training new recruits on empathy and bias. My son watched the video of what I did. He told me, Dad, that's not who we are. I'm trying to make him right. Thank you for not destroying me when you could have. You grounded the plane. You lifted me. Elijah read it twice, then set it down gently. For the first time, he smiled fully, not with triumph, with peace. He turned to Rachel. Tell the foundation to accept one more name for sponsorship. Aviation ethics. Officer class. Rachel paused, understanding. The same man. He nodded. Accountability isn't revenge. It's repair. Outside, dawn began to bloom, a slow spill of gold across the skyline. The same city that once ignored him now ran on his software, his standards, his quiet revolution. He picked up his jacket and walked toward the elevator. Heading home? Rachel asked. No, Elijah said. Heading forward. The elevator doors closed with a soft chime, the same sound that had once echoed inside. Flight 475, only this time, it didn't signal grounding. It signaled ascent. At the airport that morning, a young black boy sat by a window, tracing the flight paths with his finger. His mother pointed to a screen displaying a quote, "Respect is the runway, everything else is turbulence." The boy whispered, "One day, I'll build planes too," his mother smiled. Then build them to carry everyone. The camera panned back rows of departing aircraft, glowing under the rising sun. Each one a chapter of the same story. A man once told he didn't belong, who rewrote belonging into code, into policy, into sky. Voiceover calm, steady, final. They denied him a seat. He gave the world a standard. Because real power doesn't shout, it authorizes. This is their correction. Noah's infection had stabilized, and he would make a full recovery with a few days of rest. Relief washed over the room like sunlight after a storm. Claire finally allowed herself to breathe again. Later that afternoon, while Noah slept peacefully, Grant stepped out to the corridor. The rhythmic hum of hospital life surrounded him, the soft shuffle of nurses, the distant sound of an elevator bell. Claire joined him a moment later, her shoulders slumping from exhaustion. "You should go home and rest," he said gently. "You have been here for 2 nights straight." She shook her head. "I cannot leave him yet." He turned his chair to face her, his tone quiet but firm. "Then at least let me stay with you. You should not have to go through this alone." For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was not empty. It was full of everything they had been through together. When Claire finally looked up, her eyes shimmered. "Grant, when I met you, I never imagined this. You were a stranger at a wedding, and now you are here, holding my whole world together." He smiled. Maybe we were both strangers who needed someone to believe in us. Just then, Robert appeared at the end of the hall, holding a folder. "Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Walker, but the press wants a statement about the case. They are asking how you managed to uncover the truth about the crash." Grant hesitated, then looked at Claire. "I think I know what to tell them." He rolled forward to the media room near the hospital lobby. Cameras flashed as reporters surrounded him. His voice was calm, resolute. Justice was never about vengeance. It was about truth. "I survived because good people refused to give up on me. And now, it is my turn to make sure others have that same chance." When the conference ended, he returned to Claire and Noah's room. She looked at him with quiet pride. "You handled that perfectly." "I just told them the truth," he said. "That kindness is not weakness, it is strength." "Ron's from a..." She smiled and reached for his hand. "You have changed, Grant Walker." He looked at her and shook his head gently. "No, Claire. You changed me." The door opened, and Noah's small voice interrupted their moment. "Mom, Mr. Walker, are we going home soon?" Claire laughed. "Yes, sweetheart, soon." Grant leaned closer. "And when you are better, I am taking both of you somewhere special." "Where?" Noah asked. He smiled. "Somewhere with more dancing and less hospitals." Claire's laugh was soft but full of emotion. "You are impossible." "Maybe," he said, "but I finally have something worth being impossible for." Outside, the evening light poured through the hospital windows, wrapping them in gold. For the first time, Grant did not see a future defined by loss. He saw a home, a family, and a love that had survived every test life had thrown their way. 3 weeks later, spring settled over the city like a soft breath of renewal. The hospital stay was behind them, and Noah was back to his lively self, running ahead of his mother as they walked into the sunny courtyard of Grant Walker's Rehabilitation Center. The trees bloomed with early pink blossoms, and laughter echoed between the glass walls. Grant stood near the garden path, leaning slightly on his cane. His movements were still careful, but every step carried pride. Claire watched him for a moment before speaking. "You are walking without anyone's help now," she said softly. He smiled. "I had good motivation." Noah ran toward him, holding something behind his back. "Close your eyes, Mr. Walker." Grant obeyed, grinning. When he opened them again, Noah was holding a drawing, a picture of 3 people holding hands under a blue sky. Above it, in uneven letters, it read, "My family." Grant's throat tightened. "Is this us?" Noah nodded proudly. "Mom said families are not just about blood. They are about love." Grant knelt slowly, his eyes glistening. "Then I guess I am the luckiest man in the world." Claire stood behind her son, her eyes shining. She reached out and helped Grant up, their hands intertwining naturally, as if they had always belonged that way. That evening, the 3 of them sat by the lake behind the rehab center. The air smelled of fresh rain, and the sunset painted the water in hues of gold and rose. Claire leaned against Grant's shoulder, while Noah tossed pebbles into the water, laughing at the ripples. Grant broke the silence, his voice low but sure. "Claire, before all of this, I thought money could fix everything. I built empires, made headlines, and still felt empty. Then you came along, and you showed me what wealth really is." She turned to him, smiling softly. "And what is it, Mr. Walker?" "Is had in Terrence training." He took her hand gently. "It is waking up and knowing there is someone worth living for." Her eyes filled with quiet emotion. "You already had that strength inside you. You just needed someone to remind you." He looked toward Noah, who was still playing by the water's edge, and back at her. "Then consider this my reminder." From his coat pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box. Claire froze, her breath catching as he opened it to reveal a simple gold ring. "Claire," he said softly, "you have been my anchor, my friend, and my reason to heal. I am not asking for perfection, only partnership. Will you let me spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to face anything alone again?" For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Then Claire smiled through her tears and nodded. "Yes, Grant. 1,000 times yes." Noah turned at the sound of her voice, running toward them. "Mom, what happened?" Grant laughed and lifted the boy into his arms. "Something very good, Noah. Your mom just agreed to let me be part of your family officially." The boy's eyes widened. "So that means we get to live together?" "If your mom says yes," Grant teased. Claire laughed, wiping her eyes. "I think that can be arranged." The 3 of them stood together as the sun sank below the horizon. The wind rustled gently through the blooming trees, carrying with it the soft scent of new beginnings. Grant looked at the woman and the child beside him, the 2 people who had turned his pain into purpose. "You once told me healing was not about walking again," he said quietly. "You were right. It is about learning to love again." And as the last light of day reflected off the calm water, Grant Walker finally understood that true healing did not end with recovery. It began with the courage to open one's heart and the grace to let love stay.